as we understand it, the agreement has been done that everything pretty well stays the same during that transition period, during that 2-year period to December 2020. But we won't have a seat at the table. In other words, we will be a rule taker and not a rule giver. Are you happy with that?
Well, it's all going to be in the small print, which we haven't had a chance to look at yet. And in fact, Michel Barnier has presented the pages of text on a massive slide behind him, saying that all the bits coloured in yellow are the bits where the drafting is still subject to alteration. So we don't have a finished text. And there are some bits in, I'm told, are in green, which would seem to be, on my television, indecipherable from the bits in yellow.
But would you be happy to accept the fact that we wouldn't have a seat? But would you accept the fact that Britain wouldn't have a seat at the table when decisions are being made during that transition period?
Well, there's going to have to be some pretty significant safeguards. No country would submit itself completely to a foreign jurisdiction, which is what the EU becomes after we've left, and just accept new laws and new court rulings. There's going to have to be some mediation arrangement, even if only by our own parliament, because when you're no longer represented on the court, when you're no longer sitting at the table to make the new laws, how can we possibly just make ourselves a prisoner of this arrangement? And that wouldn't be acceptable. And there are other issues like we're going to be apparently bound by the doctrine of sincere cooperation, but we want it explicitly understood that during that period we can go and negotiate our own trade deals. We can't implement them, but we can negotiate and sign them.
Are you happy with the fact that the agreement today, during transition, is going to give EU citizens who come during that 2-year period exactly the same rights as their predecessors who come and who were here before March 2019?
Well, if what you say is correct, no, I would not be happy, because we're going to leave the European Union in March 2019, and I suspect you will find in the small print that that's not what the agreement actually says.
What crucial differences would you like to see?
Well, for a start, we need to be able to verify and register the people coming into the country.
Well, we can do that now.
To check that they're EU citizens and to register them.
We can do that now in the single market.
No, we don't actually.
We don't do it, but we could do it. The government could do it if it wanted to.
And in fact, under EU law, that could be described as discrimination if we're registering some EU citizens and not others who are coming into the country. So let's be accurate about this. And also the enforcement mechanisms. We can't have the United Kingdom Parliament bound lock, stock and barrel by the European Court of Justice as it is now, when we're no longer represented on the European Court of Justice and we're no longer part of that jurisdiction. Yeah. Why are we passing an Act of Parliament that abolishes the European Communities Act, that brings all this into law? It's going to be technically very difficult to exactly replicate this. I think there are going to be technical legal details that will end up with us having a subtly different jurisdiction where we perhaps have regard to what is happening in the European Union, and we oblige our courts to do this, to have regard, but we cannot actually be bound as we are now, because we're leaving. It doesn't respect the referendum result.
Right, but let's imagine that on the EU citizens that is the case, and that is what we understand from the agreement today. What are you going to do about it, even if?
Well, I think it'll be very difficult to get that agreement through the House of Commons, because how can you, most constituencies in the House of Commons voted leave. They voted to be free of the European Court of Justice and of the law-making capacity of the European Union. That is what the referendum was fundamentally about.
And you're nodding your head, you'd be in agreement with that.
And to finish up in the same case, but without sitting at the table, without actually being a member, I mean, this becomes a constitutional outrage. And I'm quite certain the government's not going to agree to it.
And would it be the same on fishing?
Which is why we need to look at the small print.
No, I take that. But would you feel the same about fishing quotas if we have no say on that and we're still part of the EU laws on that?
Well, I think fish is a very big problem, because how can we allow the EU to set fishing quotas for British boats, particularly as big changes in the regulatory regime are coming through, when we have no chance of taking part in the negotiations?
So what is, Jenkin, your reaction to that?
I'm delighted about that. There's one important caveat that has to be put, is that we must be able to conduct those negotiations in private. We shouldn't be obliged to have the EU sitting at the table.
But they have said, haven't they, up until now, that they would like to be part of what's going on?
Frankly, we can't be conducting a negotiation with the EU alongside every negotiation that we're conducting in the World Trade Organization.